Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast. I am, of course, Nick McDaniel, and as always, I am joined by my buddy Myron.
Hey, folks. This is going to be a fairly opinion-driven episode. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you agree, but if you don't, I'm just going to sing Toot and Tug Boogie while you complain. So that's the way it goes. The number one new release in Georgia wrestling history is the Toot and Tug Boogie. Check out Matt Hankins. Check out what's going on. Check out the people who are making a difference now in a time where it's all quiet. So what's up with you, Nick?
Well, man, coming off of a Memorial Day weekend, busy weekend, obviously, especially for pro wrestling. We got an incredible show that we got presented this weekend. Double or Nothing 2020, which we're going to dive into here first. But before we do, kind of let everybody know what we've kind of got going on down there. We're going to talk about burials, which tie hand in hand with this. Man, let me ask you something, man. It's little Impact Wrestling, something we don't normally do. We're going to dive into that a little bit.
I read something really good about it that you sent me about Impact Wrestling. It's profoundly interesting. I hope people think the same way about it because I think it's pretty brilliant.
Yep. And then, last but not least, obviously there's, the internet itself, the IWC, call it what you will, coming off of a lot of controversy after some events that occurred over the weekend, just events in general, and we're going to kind of throw our opinion in there. And as always, a little bit of talk about the Georgia indie scene, kind of to wrap it up and go home. But hey, let's start where it all starts, right? From this weekend, All Elite Wrestling, AEW, Double or Nothing was the big show that we got this weekend. And universally comes off that it appears that it was pretty well received across the board.
I enjoyed it. And I have not been able to just say, I've enjoyed a wrestling show. There were parts that weren't perfect, but for the most, this is one of those I like Money in the Bank, and it was a little bit theatrical and pre-done, and this had the theatrical and pre-done aspect of it too. I enjoyed the show, and the weirdest thing, I didn't notice until maybe 3 matches in that there wasn't a crowd there. How cool is that? They had done such a good job with putting the extras around the stage and making noise. I think it was very relatable. It felt good. It felt like a wrestling show. WWE is going to copy that now, which I can't blame them because it's a great idea. There were places where, you put up with Orange Cassidy doing the thing where he can't figure out a ladder. Yeah. And some guys you don't give two shits about wrestling. But on the whole, decent wrestling show. Good matches. I thought Cody and Cody's match was phenomenal. I thought the stadium match, man. How has anyone ever done that before?
I wouldn't say like that. I mean, nobody's done it that well. We're gonna get in that. I want to ask you before you get too far into the matches. I do want to ask you, $50.
$50.
I mean, really think about it.
Okay, and this is something I've actually tried to get this discussion going with people, and on Facebook, and the response has been mixed. Some people wanted to say really smart things. Some people just wanted to say things. When I was on my first, prior to the network, big time wrestling fandom, where I got minimum of 8 pay-per-views a year and paid $50 to $60. They were hidden in my cable bill, which kind of takes a little bit of the blow away from them. But it was a big deal. Of course, I was young and single then. I had an apartment, didn't have a house to maintain, didn't have kids, didn't have all these bills I have now. But it's a lot of money, Nick, to drop that on one evening of entertainment. What they do very well is they make it feel big.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. WWE has missed out on, your $10 WWE pay-per-views. You get 4 a year that are a big deal. The rest of them are kind of
right. But my question to you though is, have we grown till we think that's the value? Well, I mean, if a pay-per-view, my thing is if it's $50, it better deliver.
Yes,
because you're buying that sole product for $50. in my head, WWE has programmed me into it's $9.99 for the network. Oh, and by the way, you get the pay-per-view with it. It's not that the pay-per-view's $9.99. It's part of the package.
Yeah.
So if they send me a crappy pay-per-view, but I get to watch the last ride, like, am I disappointed in my $10 being spent? No.
Exactly.
So that was why I think, I know a lot of people kind of pushed back a little bit, like, in the times we're in right now, charging $50 for a pay-per-view. I don't take that approach. I'm like, look, their product cost $50. They're still going to put it out. They understand, I'm sure, I would hope, from a business standpoint, they're not, because they usually get, 100 to 115,000 buys, somewhere in that range on the pay-per-views. If they get 80, that's a win, right?
I think it's great. And you got to remember, not 100% of that $50 or $60, depending on where you bought it from, goes right into Tony Khan's pocket. It's not like he's just sitting there with a money machine pulling bills off every time you put your credit card number.
They have to pay the cable providers.
Yeah, they have to pay the cable providers. They have to pay the talent. I don't have a problem with paying for it 4 times a year if they're going to give me quality entertainment like that. I had a lot of fun with that Stadium Stampede match.
Okay.
Where I will criticize you, AEW, I'm going to, and this is a weird thing to criticize somebody about. And it's a weird time that I'm going to pup the WWE about this. But we do a Patreon where we release our stuff early to people who pay for it. The WWE, have you ever tried to put something out on YouTube where the WWE had a name in it? You get how many copyright violations pops have we gotten? And it happens like that.
We legit get them nailed, and I've disputed them and won some of them, but
they hit you.
They get you. They're going to get flagged quick.
That AEW pay-per-view was up on YouTube yesterday. Still. And if you're going to want me to pay $50 for a product,
protect your IP.
You need to protect that crap so that some jackass didn't pay for it is watching it for free the next 2 days. Why would I pay for it if I can get it for free? You have to protect your IP. That's a no-brainer. I know the cons can pay for a lawyer. Okay? It's not like the WWE has a part of YouTube. They just have good lawyers.
I mean, just have somebody on staff go into YouTube and searching for it.
How much do you think that costs people? How much do you think that costs them? Because the time I looked, there were over 50,000 views on that one link I saw.
Right.
That people were circulating. So that at at 50,000 views, at $50 a piece, you're Mr. Math.
Well, just put the 4 zeros there. Come on.
$2.5 million?
I mean, you're 50. No. You got, because it's $50. It's a zero. And then you got 5 or 50,000. So you're basically going to do 25. So 250.
So $500,000.
$250,000.
$250,000. Well, still, that's not chump change.
But anyway, let's digress. I know what you're saying, though. You're talking basic, protect your IP and whatever, because you had some great moments. Like I said, overall, we loved the card. It delivered. And here's so much so, Brian Cage debuts in the ladder match, which, kind of was predicted out. Wins the match, and apparently he's going to wrestle at Fyter Fest versus Moxley right out of the gate. And the crazy thing is, friend of the show, BQ, who does the Impact Lounge, who covers Impact Wrestling very well, by the way, just kind of a plug for the Impact Lounge, it was funny. He literally put up, after Brian Cage comes out, he's like, that's how you present a star, like a star.
Yes.
Just in literally minutes, he was presented better than he ever was presented in Impact Wrestling. And that's from an Impact guy, not from that was from an Impact guy.
Out with him. It looks like a big deal when you walk. Tad's coming out with somebody, elevates it, because it looks like he has a manager who's a big name. Okay? They put it over. The guy comes out. Shit looks real. He looks like a Greek god. I love how about this? We didn't talk about this. They combined Money in the Bank with the Royal Rumble.
Right.
And got that match. And I thought that was interesting, man.
It's a good twist. I agree. Because when they first announced it, I thought we were getting a Money in the Bank match.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're going to literally copy Money in the Bank this close to Money in the Bank?
Yeah.
And they twisted. I'm like, oh, okay. I stand corrected. But yeah, I mean, Brian Cage is going to be a star. I mean, he's a beast. So we'll see where that heads down the road. Moxley defeated Brody Lee. I mean, there wasn't a whole ton. I mean, honestly, it was a good match.
Good match.
Wasn't, you know.
I'm not a big fan of either guy, but it was a good match. I think they've got to get the belt off Moxley.
Well, I know. I mean, you know, hey, friend Platinum asked about this backlash for both of these guys this week, and like, I don't really dislike Moxley. I just said I just didn't think his run was working, but it wasn't his fault. My only question was Brody Lee comes in as the exalted one. You got a pretty big story in it, you know, and then he basically is, and I know, like, oh, it wasn't his debut. It was his pay-per-view debut. It was his first big match. And he takes the L right away. Now, which is funny, we're going to talk about burials next in our next topic here. But yeah, I mean, is what it is. So it kind of felt like maybe they stunted the momentum with them. But
I like a champion who's flashy. I like a Chris Jericho. I like a Cody. I like a Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, guys that carry the belt. Moxley, not a bad worker, not a bad guy, not super charismatic. Doesn't strike me as a champion. But who knows?
I just think there's a disconnect there with you and him. I just don't. I mean, because a lot of people love him, think he's charismatic, but I mean, I get it. He doesn't work for me either, but that's okay.
Yeah,
we always talk about that. That's okay.
Opinions.
Yeah,
not always right, but opinions.
Following up, you mentioned the Inner Circle versus the Elite with Matt Hardy earlier in the Stadium Stampede match. Clearly, pre-done. Pre-filmed. Very well done.
The chair wheels. Let this cold cure your inflammation.
Yeah, I mean, you were always a big fan of the Matt Hardy, that whole stuff, the delete.
How epic is it they got Matt Hardy, and he is doing better work now than he was doing in the WWE because of the creative control. He is back at full on crazy Matt Hardy, and he carries things. You know, he is the kind of guy that you can put a football in, not that it was in a football stadium, but you can give him the ball and depend on him to produce something that's going to be action-packed and amusing. The drowning sequence, people bitched about that. Maybe that was insensitive right now after Shad.
Oh, no. Come on, man. That was...
But if I had not been told it was insensitive, and I had not been told it was criticized and wrong, I would have never noticed. It was a wrestling bit.
Yeah, I'm
with you. That was done prior to. Was it done prior to his death? I would think it was.
I can't remember. My days are kind of crossed over. Long weekend, but
I guarantee they didn't do it to spite Shad Gaspard and all that.
Yeah, I was Hardy entertains. He's always entertaining. It was on my notes. Really good. End was what was. But again, I think they delivered pretty well on a cinematic style. I know it's kind of not what exactly they're saying.
You know, right now we're in a world where wrestling is not popular. We're in a world where very little wrestling is happening. We're in a world where you can't have people not on the payroll in the arena, basically. Cinematic is to entertain us and give us something different.
Here's my other thing.
Probably not.
Do you know why the cinematic works? Because you can do it right now. I mean, fans, like you said, aren't there to leak out what happens. They aren't there. I mean, I'm like, look, if you could tape everything right now, I would. Like, people complaining about WWE taping stuff, I totally would, because they can protect everybody, every promo, if a move is botched, reshoot it. Just stop it and reshoot it.
I wouldn't tell anybody I was taping it. Why do they have to know what's...
Well, everybody knows they tape. Like, apparently there was a monster taping session.
We have to know about every single move they make.
Well,
I don't need to know if it was taped. I don't need to know they prepared it. I don't need to know when somebody took a dump. I don't need to know everybody's personal life or problems. Just give me a show. I'm here for entertainment.
And that, hey, look, that's good. The next match is one I want to really talk about. This was, everybody wants to really talk about look, Double or Nothing. We talked about it as always. It's usually a 2 or 3 match card. Cody versus Lance Archer, Mike Tyson involved, Jake the Snake Roberts involved, Arn Anderson involved. The crazy thing is how is this not the main event, right?
Don't get much bigger than that. Well, I mean, they had the use of an entire football stadium for that match, so it was kind of
that is true.
You don't put an entire empty football stadium match on on first.
So the couple things I want to address pretty quickly when we're talking about this. One, we're not going to have a long conversation about this because we didn't even talk about this off air. A lot of people are crapping all over that belt because does it look good? No, it does not. But clearly we've been told that it's not finished.
It's not finished. And a lot of times when people get belts from the people that make belts, they still augment them to make them look better. That belt needs plating. That belt has details. That belt has relief coming. They've just got to get it. And there's been a few things shut down lately. I don't know if people have noticed.
Right. And that was the whole thing is things were, all of this was in motion. Those belts, by the way, take a while to make. They're not something you just knock out real quick.
No.
So again, that's kind of why I was like, look, I'm not even by any stretch losing any sleep over that belt conversation that was on Twitter, whatever. The other piece of this that we wanted to discuss was, so of course, Lance Archer's on a tear. He's going through, he's just destroying everybody. Dustin, QT, basically anybody involved, Jake and so forth and so on. Got the snake on Brandy, all this great story leading up to it. The question become though is a lot of the pushback has been Lance Archer shouldn't have lost this match. Cody, shouldn't have won the belt. And I'm like, okay, first of all, Bully Ray pointed this out on Busted Open Radio. There's a real reason, and there's only one major reason you can think of why Cody won. Is because they wanted that Mike Tyson presenting him the belt moment that will forever play in the history of All Elite Wrestling on every highlight reel you ever see.
The WB moment. It's a WrestleMania moment, for a better way to put it. It's a huge picture. It gives you. I mean, how many times has Mike Tyson appeared on WWE shows and done special stuff that WWE still has in highlight reels? Okay, it's a big star who is rising again, who's in a position to get back into combat sports. You get that endorsement. You get Jake the Snake. You get him pulling off his shirt to go up stop Jake the Snake. Those kind of things make national news. I would guarantee things like that get played on ESPN.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's, but here's the catch. We hear that there's possibility that that's going to be Tyson on Wednesday. Of course, everybody, hey, what do you mean? Yes, folks, we record on Tuesdays sometimes, and we always record before Dynamite and before NXT on Wednesdays, even when we record on Wednesday. So,
well, you can't actually record at a time where all wrestling news is known.
No,
okay,
not anymore. So long story short, was the question was become so. A lot of people, and we're going to segue here in the midst of the two conversations to the next topics. Everybody, of course, starts screaming, Lance Archer's buried. He's just, he lost right out of the, he had all that momentum and Cody just squashed it. And it was funny, friend of the show, Dylan Freimeyer, put a tweet out that was or a Facebook post, and it was his avatar. And it was like, did you know that a loss in professional wrestling means you're automatically buried? Yes. That's that's the trend now, is that when people lose, they're immediately considered like, oh, they're just burying him. Cody's burying him. He's taking the shovel. Well, now, here's the funny part. I don't want to be hypocritical now because we're talking hypotheticals and we're talking opinions. Okay, Cody's Teflon. I agree that Lance Archer probably should have won.
I disagree. But go ahead with your story.
Okay. Well, no, but I say that because Cody's Teflon. Cody could lose every single match, and I don't know that it would matter. If he fought valiantly and he always fought to the end, and when they bend him, he fights his way back to his feet. He's always, gets cheated. He's always gets beat down. I don't think it matters.
I don't think anybody would pay to watch Cody lose. I'll be honest with you. Cody is the baby face of the promotion. Cody was the underdog. He's so much smaller. He can't do this. He's got to reach down deep and pull it out. And you get that David and Goliath story. The unstoppable monster faces this guy who's, his wife had a snake on her. And
the problem with your story, they didn't build the unstoppable monster. The first time Cody faced him, he beat him.
I think they built him adequately in the pre-shows.
Well, I mean, they built him beating QT. They built him beating Dustin. But the first time Cody, you know what I mean? There's usually.
Put a snake on Cody's wife, Nick.
Okay, but he didn't do it to Cody.
Put a snake on Cody's wife.
Well,
Nick.
Jake did.
Yes.
Don't get me started. That's part 2 of another question of why did he not go after Jake? Jake's the one who put the snake on and defiled his wife. He went after Lance Archer to wrestle him so he win a title.
Who interfered more in the match, Arn or Jake, in your opinion?
Arn shouldn't have interfered at all.
Arn did.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. We're getting to a philosophical.
Cody used the guy's hair.
Well, maybe this is a Patreon exclusive over at patreon.com/taptapod. Maybe there's a video we cut where we debate that part
Nobody
of the
was hurt in this match. Nobody was buried.
Oh no! I agree with you. That's yes, you're correct. I was just literally, if you were asking my opinion.
Yes.
I'm not saying that Lance Archer was buried with this. That's what Twitter exploded with, that he was buried with his loss. Not me. I'm saying if you were just taking me to my opinions, what would I have done?
Yeah,
I would have, because clearly if Tyson's on here, you can still have your Wednesday moment of Tyson and Cody together with the shot, whatever. But Lance, gets the win, and he's the monster that everybody has to try to tackle over, to take this belt from him. You've got your babyface Moxley champion. Now you need your monster heel, who's where Jake gets to come out week after week, cutting promos that no one can dethrone his monster. So that's totally separate. That's just my opinion of how I would have booked it.
Mm-hmm.
But the
great thing about professional wrestling is that all of the experts on professional wrestling are on Twitter.
Right.
They're not actually in the booking offices.
No.
They're not actually in the meetings. They're on Twitter. So
yeah. And I think
listen to it.
The challenge is we've lost the comprehensions of what a real burial is. A couple of losses isn't a burial.
No.
Back in the day, if you were a non-competitive and you were getting just run through week after week after week, you were being buried. Or you want to be really put it to the story, they just took you off TV.
That's a burial.
That's a burial. They're like, you're just not getting, I would say, like, in some nights where I can accept this, some nights we don't know what the story is. Tonight's not your night, kid. It's somebody else's night.
These are all storyline devices used to produce drama to promote a product and make it move forward so that they can sell more merchandise and tickets.
And the guy, I always like to say, by the way, the guy that's always being buried is usually your guy. The guy you're a fanboy of, you're like, he's being buried. No, he's not winning as much as you would want him to.
We can't like the good guys anymore. Everybody's a Darth Vader fan.
Well, I mean, just from the sense of it could be anybody. I mean, the Revival was being buried.
Well, they just took them off TV. They started.
Well, eventually they did.
They started shitting on them, and when the shitting on them didn't work well enough, they just took them off TV. That's what a burial looks like. Okay, they were about to put them in clown costumes.
Look, here's my thing. As we've put it out time and time again, if you're being put on national television and you're making great money, there's a lot of investment in putting anybody on TV. We've had this conversation before. If you're giving a remote amount of a story, you're not being buried.
No.
Again, if you're just yanked off TV, they're just paying you to sit somewhere, you're being buried. If you're going out there week after week and getting destroyed, you're an enhancement talent.
Yeah, you're doing a job. You're working.
And so that's a debatable topic unto itself.
Right? When you enhance talent, that means you make that talent better.
Yeah.
You're an integral part of the match and the story. You're proving a point or doing something, so you're not buried by losing. You're buried by not being on television.
Right. So we would love to hear your thoughts on who you think being buried and why, and see so forth and so on. You can always email us at tappedoutpod@gmail.com or at tappedoutpod on Twitter, all forms of social media. And, of course, if you're watching on Facebook, remember, every Thursday, 6:30 p.m., right there on our Facebook page, the show drops. You can always interact, comment, and throw your stuff in there right below as you're watching the show, because we always want you to do, watch the show and, help support the show in any way you can. But one of the latest ways you can check us out is check out our sponsor for the week. This week, we are Flex Zone Supplements. That is right, Flex Zone Supplements. You can find them at Flex Zone Supplements on Facebook, or you can go to Flex Zone Sups. That's FlexZone supps.com, and pick up some of the best. I look, obviously, I'm not a big supplement guy. I'm gonna have to start, man. The wife's gonna lock me down and start getting me, trying to get me in shape. So the diet's coming, the workout's coming. So I definitely have to check out the pre workout and more, maybe even some of their Thermo, which is their thermogenic weight loss, supplement. And I can get that all at Flex Zone Supplements. Check them out here on Facebook or at FlexZoneSupps. That is FlexZoneSupps.com. Well, man, let's jump into the next topic. We don't do a whole lot of Impact Wrestling. We talked about that earlier, but this article that we came across was awesome. It was on the Combat Republic, which is it's a website, does a lot of pro wrestling as well as many other stuff. The article was written by Mike Gilbert, and I strolled across it and then sent it to you because I wanted to check it out.
Very good article.
Very well done. I highly recommend it. The Combat Republic, Mike Gilbert, the article again. I'll try to put the article up. I'll link it or something on our Facebook page or Twitter page and let people check it out. And then what strikes home is we have lots of friends who are really big fans of Impact. And the crazy thing is that even though we don't talk about it a ton, we enjoy Impact.
Yeah, I would watch Impact all the time if I had more time. That's what it comes down to. I mean, I can't watch every single wrestling program comes on television. I don't always have time to watch the big ones. A lot of things I'll watch and fast forward. A lot of things are in my DVR I haven't got time to get to.
Well, here's some of the scoop to think about when we're talking about Impact Wrestling. They're 2.5 years into the Don Callis, Scott D'Amore era. And what's cool about this article, it really breaks it down. They have stable ownership now.
Mm-hmm.
They have a network. They're on Access. Mm-hmm. So they've kind of stability there. So clearly they've got Rob Van Dam, who's a name talent. He's saying that, hey, his contract's one of the best ones he's ever had. Chris Jericho, if you believe everything that was said, he was in negotiations with Impact, said it was a lot closer than people think. Yeah. And that, so clearly there's some money there, hopefully to pay some people. And Don Callis has even said that he wants it to basically to be the ECW, like New Japan model, where they have like 8 to 10 top guys, and then kind of everybody else is rotatable. Like everybody else is interchangeable. Yeah. So you have a small base, solid base.
Very financially stable.
Very financially, stable model. So here's the problem. We've entered into this where there's a no crowd, there's a no, because they're dangerously close to earning the reputation of being nothing more than a feeder promotion. I mean, would you agree? I mean,
it's hard to argue with that assessment because guys that work there typically go on to bigger and better things. And that's been shown in the Killer Croc, or not Killer Croc.
I'll give you the list. Croc. We jotted down. We just talked about Brian Cage showing up in AEW. Killer Cross is now on NXT. Lucha Brothers, AEW, LAX, same thing. John Morrison came there, kind of rehabilitated his, not that he was in a bad, but he rehabilitated his career, got hot, became a big free agent. Boom, he's back on SmackDown. So forth and so on, right? I mean, if you just look, even guys that, even aren't there over the, EC3, Eric Young, Bobby Roode, the list goes on and on, right? Guys who have made their way through, and they've got to look at a way, if they're ever going to kill the TNA LOL stigma that they have attached to them,
mm-hmm.
I think now's the time. And that's what this article kind of is stressing out, is now's the time if they're ever going to be able to lose it. Because one of the biggest challenges Impact has always faced is, AEW, especially WWE, were running 10,000 Raw, Smack, plus big arenas, and they were always running a small show. They were doing a taping with mm-hmm. a couple hundred people in there. And so that, when you look at those two, it was a pretty big gap between the presentation when you saw it. That's not now. That's now. You can look just as good, as far as the presentation as anybody, and capture the moment. And I think that's now.
Yes, yeah, I do too. And we're in an era where cinematic is the new trend, and they were doing it with Matt Hardy back before anybody else was doing it. They need to be breaking tradition. They need to be going out there and doing the stuff. And these guys that are in charge are smart, well-thinking guys. Now is the time to go out there and do something different. Now is the time to leverage everything you can as much as possible.
Right, because right now it's hard to argue. Some people would argue. Well, we're just going to go with this. My point is they're number 4 in the world. WWE, AEW, New Japan, as far as the business goes. 3 in America, because look, Ring of Honor, they're just, that's my opinion, fully up for debate.
Who's the champion?
Of who?
Ring of Honor.
Could you tell me?
Nope. Sorry. That's just the way I look at it.
Yeah, no. And so when you
watch wrestling all the time, so.
Yeah, I mean, but there's, it's time for them to present their stars like stars. We hate to refer back to Brian Cage is a bigger star after one show than how he was presented in Impact.
Yep.
So the couple of those steps, and they kind of brought them out, and we're going to list them real quick and kind of buzz through them here, is number 1, sign some of these free agents. The ones that this mass release that everybody's on about WWE had to let go.
Mm-hmm.
We said it. AEW can't sign them all. MLW can't sign them all. Ring of Honor can't sign them all. There's going to be a flood of talent out there that this is a huge opportunity for them to name. I mean, we're talking names like, hey, Kurt Angle had a great run there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Kurt Angle come back as a wrestler, but as a general manager or an on-screen character, he might do it. Rusev.
Pick up some pieces. Pick up some little pieces.
Yeah.
You don't have to get the whole puzzle. You don't have to buy everything. Just go out there and pick up some things that would improve you.
I mean, think about Rusev in an Impact ring.
I think that would be great.
That create a little buzz for sure.
Mm-hmm.
EC3 going back home. Think about it. That's an angle that writes itself, right? Mm-hmm. That he went over to that other company and they just basically never gave him a chance. So he's coming back.
We understand you here.
Well, he's going to come back to his home and be a star, where he was always a star. So forth and so on. Gallows and Anderson. I mean, sure, they're probably going to end up in All Elite, whatever. I mean, but you don't know that. Give them a run, man. There's name after name. EC3 was not EC3. Eric Young was one of those, and he was a pretty. He had a great run in Impact as well.
He's a great journeyman. He can do anything. He can work out in a lot of different positions. Yeah. Yes, I agree 100%.
Number 2, upgrade your announce team. Look, Josh Matthews, nothing personal. He's done the job for a long time. One of the suggestions in the article was Kevin Kelly. Reunite basically the New Japan team of Kevin Kelly and Don Callis and slap them out there in front. They do a great job for New Japan. Yeah. They do a great job for Impact as well. And Kevin Kelly's kind of got that reputation that he's earned it. So I think he would be a good spot. Let's move, number 3. Limit the intergender matches. Look, we get the novelty. We understand why people, are into it. Both of us share the same opinion that it's not for us.
That's for wrestling people, wrestling crowds, wrestling fans. It's not for your general public. If you want to get over, this is just hard truth coming from me in my opinion. If you want to get over on the big stage, you need to put out stuff that appeals to everyone. Intergender does not appeal to everyone. Intergender probably doesn't appeal to 3/4 of the people out there.
Here's where I and intergender is a struggle for me in the sense of I don't have a problem with intergender matches if done correctly. I don't like them for the sake of having them, and I don't feel like forcing them to happen. No. There have been plenty of intergender matches that we've watched that I've actually enjoyed because they were presented the right way. It's just why. That's a lot of times, as with anything, I go to using logic, and that gets me in trouble. But I'll sit there and always say, when somebody presents something, I'll go, why?
Yeah, I have to understand it. It's just like blood. I need to understand why you get colored, why it's important. If you get color every show, it's not important anymore. If you have intergender is a special attraction that you build up to, like Sammy and Tessa, like Ashton Starr and Danny Jordan. They did a good one.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where it has to be something that appeals to the mainstream. This is the thing, if you want to be mainstream, you have to appeal to the mainstream. That's all there is to it.
Right. So again, it's not a knock on intergender matches as a whole. It's just limit them to make them special and not the norm. And that's, again, because you're chasing the casual fan base who it's actually kind of important. That's where your numbers are going to grow, is because of a casual fan base. Restructure your titles. I mean, they've got an Impact, they've got a TNA, and an X Division.
Oh.
And what do any of them mean?
What's an X Division?
Look, that if you want to have a great thing, Bruce Pritchard talks about it. Eric Bischoff talk about it. Like, what does it mean? What does it stand for? It's a phenomenal topic to hear them discuss that, because it just...
And they know a lot about wrestling, and they don't understand it. When you have to explain something to wrestling fans, you lose a little bit. I should be able to sit down and watch wrestling and understand what everything is. Yeah. I'm an experienced viewer, for lack of a better way to put it. I should wonder.
You can't lose the TNA stigma if you still have a title called the TNA title.
Bingo.
But now, rename it. I don't care. But look, X Division, it's your cruiserweight title. Go full-fledged. It's 205 or less, or 250, whatever. Your Impact title, it's the name of your freaking company. It's your big title. Make it the big belt, and make the TNA title, call it whatever you want, and maybe it's your second-tier title. That's okay. I mean,
if it's a gimmick that they were just doing to put over a storyline, that's cool for me.
Yeah, that TNA belt that you rebrand to whatever you want, it's an open weight. That's what they were suggesting. Like, it's anybody can hold it. It's not a class belt, but it's your second tier belt. It's kind of like the Intercontinental. It's kind of like the US.
That's like the X Division belt.
Do what?
Well, if it's open weight, anybody. I'm confused.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Make your X Division your cruiserweight belt, where it's 205 or less. Your Impact title's your main world title. It's a heavyweight title. And then your TNA belt's your Intercontinental US belt.
What if a guy smaller wants to wrestle? And a heavyweight and world titles are such big terms. It's hard.
Here's the funny part is, people always get mad at me when I use logic. You can actually be the heavyweight champion as long as if there's a cutoff, but nobody ever says you have to be. You just have to, for example, if you're a bantamweight champion, or you're a, whatever.
If you're boxing, basically.
If you're boxing, you just have to weigh less than the max. There's no limit, like how low you can be. It doesn't make any sense, because you're going to get killed generally. Yeah. But that's why I said I don't have a qualm with a guy like Finn Balor being a heavyweight champion. He's under the weight because there's no weight.
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, just give the titles the meaning, give them some definition, and then it kind of makes sense versus just having.
Make it simple.
Look, don't get me started. WWE's got too many titles, and they've got we've had that conversation. Yeah. We just were at this current moment we're on. I'm giving them the same spiel I try to give WWE.
You know what the best title they have is, in my opinion?
Whose?
WWE.
What's that?
The Women's Tag Team Championships. Because it's defended on either card. It's defended on either show. It can pop up anywhere. You don't have to limit it to just SmackDown or Raw and have less people competing for it, because you don't have that many women's tag teams. You put it on both shows, you double the size of the competitors for it. It might be a shit belt, and it might not be something they even take seriously, but it's the best one they've got, in the fact that there's not a second one. It's a belt,
right,
for the women's tag team. They don't have a Raw Smack. I can't keep track of the Raw and SmackDown tag team champions. I don't even know what they call the big belt half the time. I have to make sure I reference it. It's complicated. Women's tag team title is the women's tag team title. It's the best women's tag team.
Right.
Simple.
And then last but not least, this is like, look, this one's tough for me to even have this conversation about a world-class promotion, and that's upgrade your audio equipment. And they're right. If you've ever watched like the backstage things, it's just not great all the time. I mean, they need to upgrade. Anybody that's like local, that does like a podcast, if we feel like, dude, if I'm noticing audio issues, which I do from time to time on multiple things, don't get me even started about my work conference call where I was sitting there complaining about the audio quality of a work conference call, right? one made my Anyway,
But on top of that, why doesn't a major corporation enhance the audio if it sounds bad?
it's all taped.
There's technology way above my pay grade for fixing audio. Okay, I use technology to make sure audio levels back. If I'm on an interview with somebody, I record the interview, I dump it into a program to make sure everything balances up, and then I edit the audio once it balances out. They're a major corporation. There should be somebody with some TV experience who can make that stuff sound well, even if you got crap.
Right.
There's no excuse.
No, I'm right there with you. But anyway, hopefully, Impact should read the article. It's really, like I said, it was really well done. Check it out. Mike Gilbert over at the Combat Republic made us, I always love articles that make you think and make you kind of like ponder it and stuff. So what are your thoughts, man, at tappedoutpod, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Check us out. Last thing, obviously we weren't going to go to a whole show and not talk about this at law. We're just not going to talk about it in the angle that most people are thinking about probably. Just lots of stuff going on. I'll let you kind of start because this is really in your wheelhouse.
It's we're in a time where everyone is connected on the internet, on social media at all times. That's good for me and you. That's good for me and my mom or my brother who I don't see all the time. It's not good for some asshole who wants to bully people. I don't know if your kids have had problems with social media, but both of my kids have had problems with social media. One of them's obsessed with it. One of them sneaks around to get it. And if I don't damn watch everything she's doing, she's talking to some weirdo in Argentina. Just might be totally based some guy sitting in Alabaster, Alabama, for all I damn well know. But it's bad if you don't use it responsibly. And the problem is you get a bunch of people on the internet, you get these keyboard warriors that are going to attack people and bully them and say things. And I've been bullied a lot in my life up to adulthood by bosses and supervisors. Hell, I worked for CVS for 11 years. I had bosses where bullying was a concept, a management style. I've been in lots of fights when I was younger. Don't do that anymore. I don't fight anymore. I ain't going to do it. But been bullied a lot. I was always the fat kid until I became the fat kid that played football and could hit you really hard. I'm not going to sit here and say anything about the person who committed suicide, that young lady. I don't understand her situation. I don't know her situation. I have been horribly depressed for the majority of my life, but I have never committed suicide. Well, clearly, as I'm sitting here, because I've always had something important to me to keep going.
And that's kind of what we're talking about is just like, it was all attributed to these people that were just attacking her on social media. And it doesn't just start there. Like in the recent week, like last week alone, we discussed how Jim Cornette blasted Becky Lynch's decision to have a baby. He blasted Dana Brooke about her appearance. And then this week of all things, on top of, unfortunately, the unfortunate events of the young lady's suicide in Japan, then we had, this podcaster make these ridiculous comments about Alexa Bliss and about her inabilities in the ring, which clearly would translate somehow to her skills in the bedroom, which is just asinine to begin with.
And misogynistic and stupid, and it just has no business in a conversation about a athlete at all. Somebody's personal life, no conversation at all. But my problem with the whole thing is, she shouldn't have responded to that asshat. He'd have been another asshat fucking talking stupid shit.
And that's it. It was a quote you used. Don't give them the power. I'm like, don't even engage that person because you're giving them the power. Guy had, and it's funny because I say it like, the guy had 300 followers. Nobody's going to even know that this happens if it's not engaged.
300 followers, but just opening a damn Twitter account. Just
ignore them. Just go keep cashing your checks, doing your job. And I think that's the biggest obstacle because, friend of the show had a great, if you haven't checked out Stephen Platinum's full disclosure and commentary this week, check it out. He does a very deep dive into the whole, like I said, it is from a different perspective.
I watched it twice, actually.
Yeah, it's very well done, and it's one of those where it's kind of like I get it. There's every situation's different, especially entertainers, performers. There's they're more tend to be seeking approvals and seeking compliment. And maybe I'm using my words not the best one here, but there's something they want adulation and stuff for, because that something that generally they're trying to fill something in themselves. And here's the funny thing, because everybody's like, oh, and I'm saying this from a perspective of, I understand. We do this show because we want fans.
We have gotten a certain niche from doing the show where we're recognized. People tell us they like the show. People shake our hands in public. People ask us ideas and shoot stuff by us. Why anybody would respect my knowledge of professional wrestling, I have no idea. But we have built a niche of some kind that makes me feel good. I appreciate every single time somebody tells me they enjoyed the show.
Now,
really does a lot for me.
The yin to that yang is that we pointed out, yeah, we do it because we want fans. We want people to watch us. We like it when people think that, hey, tell us the show's great. Now, the flip side of that is, like you pointed out, hey, I was always a big kid. You were always a big kid. So guess what? We were going to be subjected to, when we started the podcast, especially, God forbid, when we went video, it was going to be like, oh, Lord, here it goes. Exactly. There's going to be shots taken. And the only suggestion, and it is really something that I stress to anybody that's engaging any of it, just let it go. It's really not that big a deal. They just move on. Especially for somebody who just isn't important in your life.
If you're a talented performer, that person is not going to affect you at all. I understand how being belittled feel. It can be horrible. And I don't ever comment on somebody's mental status. I feel sad that these things happened, but one, don't listen. But two, if you're that kind of person that does shit like that to people, you're a disgusting piece of crap. Stop. There is no reason to go after somebody like that. Why do you like wrestling if you're going to do nothing but talk bad about it? If you're going to do nothing but insult wrestling fans, why is it?
There's a huge difference, and that's what and it's funny because we try to say on our show, I don't particularly, it's like we try not to trash anything. It's more like, hey, it's not for me. I didn't like it. I didn't, it didn't do anything for me. I didn't connect with it. That makes sense.
Yeah. It's opinion.
We joke about it with you. Seth Rollins. You don't like Seth Rollins.
Like Seth Rollins.
But you're not going to sit there and you're not going to attack Seth Rollins physically.
He got my sweetheart pregnant.
Yeah.
And now she's not going to wrestle anymore. And I'll admit to it. But the thing is, if I was going to say something to Seth Rollins, I would go find Seth Rollins and say it to him, and he'd beat the shit out of me. So that's why I'm not going to say it. What power do you get bullying somebody on the internet? What does that give you? Are you sitting there in your mom's house, dick in your hand, damn bullying people on the internet? That's horrible. Stop.
I agree.
Treat people like human beings.
Well, hey, look, it's we just kind of knew we had to at least address it a little bit on the show before we got out of here. We're still going to do some Georgia Indie talk, but before we do that, again, make sure you check out our sponsor this week, Flex Zone Supplements. Find them at Flex Zone Sups. That's FlexZoneSupps.com, FlexZoneSups.com, or check them out on Facebook. Just do it right there, Flex Zone Supplements. Give them a check out and get some of that awesome. And it's funny because I talked to a few people that use it, and they were telling me that the pre-workout is the absolute best pre-workout they've ever used. And I told them, hey, I might have to call our friend of the show here and get some of that thermogenic weight loss supplement Thermo, see if I can get this diet thing going. But again, check them out. We'll put the link up on our Facebook page again. They're doing a contest that we've already shared once on our Facebook page. Actually, I think I shared it on my Facebook page.
Yeah, I really would enter this. If you're into bodybuilding, if you're into weightlifting, exercising, anything like this, this is something you need to participate in.
Absolutely.
I don't know anything about it. I'm just a fat guy in his basement.
There you go. But hey, let's get into a little bit of this.
All you want.
Yeah, Georgia indie talk. Kind of it's funny. Every week we kind of keep saying the same old thing, right? Like, hey, how can you talk about Georgia wrestling when there isn't any? Well, guess what, folks? June 6th, Southern Violence and Wrestling in Athens. They're having an outdoor show, so check it out. Coming up soon. Anarchy announced that the date hasn't actually been set in stone as of our recording, but they're going to do another empty arena show / match coming up pretty soon. So check out.
They did was amazing.
Yeah, I thought they did a great job. But hey, here's the thing we want to plug, and this is something that Matt Hankins, Toot and Tug Boogie, look him up on Facebook, guys. Matt Hankins, hysterical stuff.
Okay. Outside of like match of the year, Matt Hankins has all the Georgia Wrestling History Awards right now. I don't know if he gets Female Performer of the Year, but think about it. And think about the guys who are out there doing the work, even though there's no wrestling, even though there's nothing going on. How many people are busting their asses to stay relevant in a time where there is no wrestling? Matt Hankins, #1 genius. Follow that guy.
Yeah, give him a follow. Matt Sells, who we've talked about, you've seen him on All Elite Wrestling. You've seen him all over Georgia. He does a show called Never Sunny in Matlanta. Follow him on Facebook. Definitely check it out. That Matt Sells Performer of the Year last year kind of shows you why he was Performer of the Year, the Georgia Wrestling History Awards. Hold My Beer Hanson keeps putting out those skits that he does. I mean, it's money. Tyler Rivera doing his thing. I mean, he's always hustling.
Stay in the public view.
Yep. David Ali, that little series he's got going on is just deep, man. You got to check it out.
Brilliant work.
Brilliant job. It's being filmed and the way it's been edited and stuff. It's really, really good. James Caleb Kitchens, a viral pro. Evolved Review. It's kind of something he's doing right now. And full disclosure, I was on last week's episode. Stephen Platinum is going to be on next week's episode. They're reviewing the Dark Sides of the Ring. I did the Von Erichs. I jokingly said I did it because I was the only one alive when they were still around. I'm the only one old enough. And of course, Platinum is doing the Herb Abrams one at UWF and stuff. And kudos to Stephen Platinum, man. He's because his whole thing was indie stuff, and that look, unfortunately, here we are. We're talking about how it's dried up for us as well. He's covering the national stuff, so if you want to hear his take on Raw, SmackDown, I think he's not doing SmackDown, but he did the pay-per-view for Double or Nothing. He does Dynamite, NXT, AEW Dark, a lot of that stuff as well. Check him out. And it's funny. Somebody the other day was like, "Man, you guys are talking about the same people over and over and over and over again when you talk about the Georgia Indie Wrestling." You know why? Because they're the ones putting it in. They're putting in the work and they're sending us the stuff and they're getting it out there.
Do something. Don't criticize the people that are doing something if you ain't doing anything.
Yeah.
Okay? We're out there making shows. These people are out there busting their ass. It's a great time to see where the people who are passionate about what they do and how it separates out. And I can't say enough about the people who have trained and worked their asses off to do this. The people from One Fall, somebody said, "Well, I heard One Fall was really good the other day," and I'm like, "Well, I'll tell you one thing. I know the people behind it. I know the people that train there, and if you want to be on AEW Dark or AEW, that's where you go."
Mm-hmm.
Because if you want to see the Georgia wrestling, you want to see Georgia independent wrestling, they show it on AEW now. Because they're the only ones doing wrestling content. So watch that, see your favorites, wait till the time we can put people in seats. Okay?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to get into many of the details, but if a director or producer of a film, which is on Amazon, it's a wrestling movie, full disclosure, reached out and wants us to watch it and do a review of it, look, man, it's not that hard. Just say we'll put you out there. We'll share your stuff. We'll plug it. You just got to get it to us, and you got to put it out there, and we absolutely will. So, and by the way, that's going to be coming soon. That review for that movie. We talked about doing a watch along, wink wink, on our Patreon, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. We're going to put it together and figure out the details. I'm waiting permission can we show the on screen while we watch it, do the watch along. If not, then we'll do just to kind of have it on our screens and you'll get to watch us watching it.
Conrad and Tony bit.
Yeah, exactly. So, but we'll figure that out. But yeah, but man, again, kudos to Hankins, Matt Sells, Kitchens, Platinum, Tyler Rivera, Hold My Beer Hansen, David Ali, amongst others, for putting out stuff week in, week out. So that tickled you.
The toot and tug boogie tickles me.
The toot and tug boogie, yeah, absolutely. It's gold, Jerry. It's gold. That's all I'll tell you. But man, hey, that's we're coming up against the wall. I'm looking, and of course, as always, unfortunately, I've only got about 3 minutes left, so Danny Jordan will not be joining us this week. So hopefully we'll get her on pretty soon. Because before we get you out of here, gotta plug everything as usual. Make sure you're subscribing to the podcast. Player FM, Apple Podcast, iHeartMedia, Spotify, Google Podcasts. It's all right above us. Exactly, man. Just do the search, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating review. It always helps those algorithms to move us up the charts. We appreciate the love in Ireland. How in the world we're climbing into the top 10 in Ireland, I have no idea. But hey, we'll take it.
No, I'll do what I can.
Yeah. And then of course, like I said, our favorite place is at Patreon at patreon.com/tappedoutpod. Subscribe there. We appreciate all the guys that are spending their hard-earned money, and the ladies. I shouldn't say the guys; it's a habit. But all the young ladies and all the young men and all the family that we have over there that are paying their money. Yeah, we have women that pay. It happens.
I don't see all the books. I trust Nick. He says we've got women over there.
There are, believe it or not, there are women throwing money at us on over at Patreon. So we always appreciate that. And of course,
no feet pics for me.
And no, we always on Facebook every Thursday, 6:30. We drop the show right there on our Facebook page. And then of course, as always, YouTube. Hey, look, we're not telling you to watch us on YouTube, but we have people who do. We would prefer you watch us on Facebook and listen to the podcast on all your favorite podcast players. But happens, just do a search at YouTube. Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast will come up. I promise. Subscribe there. Subscribe everywhere. So
it's hard not to find us. We're everywhere in an easy.
Yeah, pretty much got to go out of your way not to. If you do any searching, you're going to find us. That is absolutely right. If you go into Google and type Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast, well, you're going to find us pretty easy. So, but man, that's all I've got this week. You got anything else for us?
Nothing at all.
This week I'll be the sentimental guy. Just be nice to each other, man. It's almost we hopefully this is coming to an end sooner than later, and we'll be all back at our wrestling shows and enjoying our time together. Because God knows we love each other more, it seems, in person than on social media.
Amen.
So, if that's it, man. Well, what's the old saying, brother? If I've got nothing and you've got nothing, what time is it?
It's time to tap out.